I've spent the last month losing my mind in Star Citizen's Onyx facilities. You know what happens when you create the most visually stunning content in the game's history, but then chain it to a reward system seemingly designed by sadists? You get these 120 dungeon-like locations scattered across Stanton that arrived with 4.3. God, they're frustrating. There's this moment when you're deep in one of these facilities. The lighting is perfect, the atmosphere is incredible, and you think, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. Then, the freight elevator eats your loot, again, for the 5th time. And you're just sitting there staring at the screen, wondering why you keep doing this to yourself. Listen, I need to break down this whole Onyx situation because it's driving me insane. First, we'll talk about why these facilities are legitimately the best-looking content Star Citizen has produced in 12 years of development. No exaggeration. Then, we'll dive into why those damn freight elevators and the RNG reward system have become the bane of everyone's existence. Finally, I'll walk through some fixes that aren't pipe dreams, stuff they could actually implement without rewriting half their codebase. I've got good news and bad news. The good, the atmosphere will blow your mind. The bad, those freight elevators aren't just annoying. They're now the only path to your rewards. And they're broken. So incredibly broken. You know those rare gaming moments when you forget you're playing a game? That's what walking into an Onyx facility feels like when everything's working. These places are mind-blowing. Step into your first one, and I'm sure you'll just stand there for a solid minute taking it all in. When CIG's art team isn't fighting network engineers or performance constraints, they create environments that make you question whether you're looking at a game or some bizarre photorealistic documentary. These aren't your standard copy-paste facilities either. Each one tells its own story through environmental details. I spent 20 minutes in a break room last night just looking at coffee mugs, personal photos, and scattered documents. Someone took the time to place a half-eaten sandwich next to a medical journal, a journal with actual readable text about pharmaceutical protocols. Who does that? And the wear and tear? Perfect. Not that fake, let's add some rust textures wear and tear you see in most games. These places look lived in, used for decades by actual people, dealing with actual problems. Medical equipment with finger smudges where it would actually be handled. Worn pads on the floor where staff would regularly walk. Maintenance panels that look like they've been removed and replaced dozens of times. The first time I met Arkin Maller, I almost forgot he was an NPC. This isn't some wooden quest giver statue who exists solely to dump exposition. The guy has actual presence. When he's explaining the situation at each facility, you can hear the exhaustion, the frustration, the dark humor of someone who's seen too much medical bureaucracy. His delivery makes those pharmaceutical conspiracies feel connected to everything else happening across Stanton. Right now, we've got access to the engineering and research wings, with a third wing and cooperative zones supposedly coming later. But honestly, these two areas already offer more meaningful gameplay than most completed games. The engineering puzzles aren't your typical match 3 symbols garbage. You're analyzing actual seismic data readouts, cross-referencing equipment logs, and tracking system failures through logical deduction chains. Last night, I spent 45 minutes trying to stabilize a critical system by identifying which backup generators had enough capacity to handle the load. Not because some arbitrary game mechanic required it, but because it made sense within the context of what was happening at that facility. The research wing has you piecing together medical trials that went horribly wrong, and sometimes the environmental storytelling gets genuinely disturbing. The narrative with Dr. Yortz and the regen crisis creates this eerie backbone to everything you're doing. Finding research notes in one facility that reference experiments from another location 3 moons away makes the whole system feel interconnected. When facility staff mention specific incidents you investigated elsewhere, that world building starts clicking in ways that remind me of the first time I played System Shock or BioShock. I caught myself actually caring about these fictional pharmaceutical researchers, started wondering if some of them survived, found myself reading every terminal message, not because I had to, but because I wanted to know what happened to these people. That's what makes this whole situation so goddamn frustrating. When it works, Onyx content shows you exactly what Star Citizen could be, but then the basic systems fall apart, and you're left wondering why you bother at all. The true endgame boss of Star Citizen isn't some heavily armored mercenary or ace pilot. It's a freight elevator. A simple, stupid freight elevator that refuses to give you the stuff you earned. Last Thursday, I spent 90 minutes, carefully working through an engineering wing, solved every puzzle perfectly, deduced the research anomalies, found all the hidden data points, felt pretty damn accomplished. Then I got to the freight elevator to collect my reward and nothing. Absolutely nothing. The interface just kept spinning and spinning and spinning. 20 minutes I stood there like an idiot, waiting for armor pieces that were apparently stuck in digital limbo. Ended up having to log out with nothing to show for my time. 0 progress. 0 rewards. just frustration and the nagging question of why I keep coming back to this game. That's not even the worst case. Sometimes the elevator pretends to work, but your rewards never materialize. Sometimes they appear but can't be picked up. Sometimes they show up 20 minutes after you've given up and started doing something else. I've seen players staring at elevators for so long, they started role-playing as security guards. Playing with friends makes this nightmare exponentially worse. My org ran a full facility last weekend, and guess what? The person who accepted the final mission got all 10 ASD drives, while everyone else got absolutely nothing. 6 people, 2 hours of coordination, and 5 of us walked away empty-handed. One guy in our group lost 11 ASD drives during a single testing session. 11! Those are actual currency items needed for progression. What's infuriating is that this isn't some new bug they haven't had time to fix. Freight elevators have been failing spectacularly for years. Remember the mining outpost elevators? Same issue. Remember cargo delivery terminals? Same issue. They fixed the elevators at major landing zones because those are the flashy showcases everyone sees first. But anything involving actual mission rewards or player cargo? Complete disaster. Back in January, community manager Jared specifically said elevator fixes were a development priority. Said they understood how broken reward systems were killing player engagement. Promised it would be addressed. Here we are, 7 months later, and I'm still watching elevators eat my loot while spinning endlessly. The community has developed elaborate rituals just to collect things they legitimately earned. Some players insist you have to stand at specific angles inside the elevator. Others claim you need to log out and back in exactly 3 times. Some people travel to different facilities, hoping to find one functional elevator among dozens of broken ones. It's absurd. This creates a fundamental trust problem. When I can't rely on getting rewards for my time investment, why should I bother engaging with content at all? Why spend an hour on complex puzzles when there's a solid chance I'll get nothing for my efforts? Imagine finishing a challenging dungeon in any other game, defeating the final boss, and then finding out there's a 50-50 chance the loot chest might delete your rewards instead of giving them to you. You wouldn't keep playing that game. Yet here we are, still hoping that maybe this time the elevator will decide to function properly. Even when the elevators deign to function, you crash headfirst into Star Citizen's true nightmare, an RNG system with literally no alternative path forward. Let me tell you about my personal white whale, the ASD-branded GIST armor, specifically the stealth variant that everyone's actually chasing from these Onyx runs. I've completed 37 full facility runs. 37! I have 6 duplicate helmets, 8 duplicate arm pieces, and still no chest piece. None. 0. Absolutely nothing to show for dozens of hours of gameplay. This wouldn't be nearly as infuriating if the game had literally any fallback system, any alternative acquisition path, any way to convert duplicates into something useful, but it doesn't. The entire reward structure is built on pure RNG with no safety nets whatsoever. I know people who've run 60-plus facilities and still can't complete a single armor set. These aren't casual players either. These are dedicated fans who understand every system and execute flawlessly. The game just refuses to give them what they're working toward, transforming skilled gameplay into a glorified slot machine with terrible odds. Most games with heavy RNG elements include alternative progression paths. In normal MMOs, when you get duplicate drops, you can sell them to other players or trade for items you actually need. Bad luck becomes tolerable when you have options, when other paths exist. Star Citizen has none of these safety nets. That 5th duplicate helmet, completely worthless. You can't sell it, can't trade it, can't break it down into components, can't use it to improve your chances at getting the chess piece. It just sits in your inventory, a useless reminder of how broken this system truly is. This creates a grinding nightmare where time investment doesn't guarantee any meaningful progress. Skill doesn't matter. Dedication doesn't matter. Only luck matters, and the odds are absolutely terrible. The lack of player trading turns every duplicate into wasted potential. I've got org members sitting on enough duplicate armor pieces to outfit 20 people, while others can't get a single complete set. In any rational game, we'd just trade with each other. Problem solved. But in Star Citizen's current implementation, impossible. What makes this particularly absurd is how it transforms quality content into a casino game. The puzzle solving becomes secondary to praying that this time, finally, you might get the armor piece you've been hunting for weeks. Players start viewing Onyx facilities not as interesting content, but as frustrating gambling machines with terrible payouts. Without a player market creating alternative paths, random rewards become insurmountable barriers instead of engaging challenges. Other games use RNG as one element in larger progression systems. Star Citizen uses it as the only element, creating frustration that completely undermines otherwise excellent content design. There's this special kind of madness that happens when you're standing in front of what's clearly broken equipment and the game just expects you to know what to do with it. No hints, no instructions, not even a clear indication of whether you're supposed to interact with it at all. Last week, I spent 20 minutes staring at a damaged pipeline, wondering if I was supposed to fix it or just document its existence. The mission objective simply said repairs required with no additional context. Was I supposed to use a repair tool, interact with a nearby terminal, find replacement parts? The game offered absolutely no guidance. This transforms what should be logical problem solving into blind guesswork. Some broken equipment can be fixed by interacting with control panels. Other identical looking equipment requires specific tools. And some broken stuff is just set dressing that can't be interacted with at all. The game expects you to figure out which category each piece falls into through pure trial and error rather than actual clues or feedback. I finished one mission purely by accident after randomly clicking on things for 15 minutes. Did I solve anything? No. Did I learn anything? Also no. I just happened to click on the right object after exhausting every other possibility. That's not satisfying gameplay. It's a frustrating pixel hunt disguised as problem solving. The contrast with the otherwise polished environmental design makes these unclear objectives feel even more jarring. You're surrounded by incredible atmospheric details and professional voice acting, then suddenly hit a wall because basic interaction mechanics aren't explained properly. It's like watching a masterpiece film where occasionally the actors just stare silently at the camera for 5 minutes for no apparent reason. The community has responded by creating unofficial guides that explain what the game itself should be telling you. When you need to Alt-Tab out of your immersive experience to check Reddit for basic puzzle solutions, something has gone fundamentally wrong with your design philosophy. These unclear objectives completely break the narrative flow that makes these missions special. You go from being fully immersed in environmental storytelling to standing around confused about whether you're supposed to click on a pipe or a terminal or nothing at all. The atmospheric magic dies when you're forced to guess basic interaction mechanics through trial and error. When good puzzle design works, you feel clever for figuring things out. When bad puzzle design happens, you feel lucky for randomly stumbling onto the correct solution. Onyx facilities constantly oscillate between these two extremes, sometimes within the same mission. I've never seen a game so determined to interrupt its own storytelling momentum. You'll be deep in an engaging narrative, piecing together environmental clues about a pharmaceutical disaster, when suddenly, Arkin Malor tells you to leave everything behind and fly to a completely different moon to continue what should be a single coherent story. Last night, I was investigating a fascinating research anomaly on Hurston. Found logs detailing experimental treatments, patient reactions, staff concerns about ethical violations. I was genuinely invested in learning what happened to these researchers. Then, abruptly, the mission told me the next part of this exact same investigation was happening at a facility orbiting Microtech. Pack up, leave, quantum travel for 5 minutes, find new landing coordinates, spend another 5 minutes approaching and landing. By which point I'd forgotten half the narrative details that made the first location compelling. It feels like someone wrote these stories as self-contained experiences, then someone else chopped them into pieces and scattered them across the system. Each individual facility has enough environmental detail to support complete narrative arcs. The environmental storytelling is rich enough to sustain full stories in single locations, but instead, we're forced to bounce between moons and planets like we're on some kind of disjointed, interplanetary fetch quest. The immersion completely shatters when you have to break character to travel between story fragments. You go from being absorbed in medical facility drama to sitting through quantum travel loading screens. By the time you reach the next location, whatever emotional connection you had to the narrative has dissipated into the vacuum of space. This creates a patchwork storytelling experience that undermines the otherwise excellent environmental narrative. The individual facilities are masterpieces of atmospheric design, but when you fragment these stories across multiple locations with significant travel time between them, the emotional coherence falls apart. I understand why they did it. Distributing content across different locations makes sense from a server population perspective, but from a narrative experience standpoint, it's disastrous. Instead of experiencing focused stories about medical crises, you're running meaningless errands across multiple planets, collecting narrative fragments that never quite reconnect properly. The fix wouldn't even be difficult. Simple voiceover lines acknowledging that we need to continue this investigation at another facility would help maintain narrative continuity. Instead of pretending it's all happening in one place, the game could frame multi-site missions as connected investigations spanning multiple facilities. A small change in framing could dramatically improve the storytelling coherence without altering the fundamental mission structure. As it stands now, the multi-location design transforms potentially engaging narratives into glorified delivery missions with extra steps. The system feels designed by people who don't understand how environmental storytelling actually works. Let's get through the bullshit for a minute. Is Star Citizen still just a tech demo in 2025? The answer isn't as simple as either side wants to believe. 5 years ago, that glorified tech demo label made perfect sense. The game was mostly empty space stations and broken promises back then. But continuing to dismiss everything as not a real game requires actively ignoring evidence of functional gameplay loops that absolutely work when the technical infrastructure doesn't collapse underneath them. Last week, I completed a full seismic data mission start to finish. Located the scanning points, analyzed the data, extracted meaningful information, submitted my findings, and got paid. The entire loop functioned exactly as designed. I solved actual puzzles that required logical thinking and environmental observation. I made decisions that affected outcomes. I received tangible rewards for my efforts, until the elevator ate them, but that's a separate issue. These aren't placeholder activities or proof of concept demonstrations. They're legitimate gameplay loops with clear objectives, measurable progress, and meaningful choices. When the underlying tech works, these missions deliver genuine entertainment value comparable to fully released games. The project has made technical progress that critics conveniently ignore. Server meshing implementation actually functions now. The monthly patch cadence has stabilized. Performance has improved dramatically on mid-range systems. These aren't marketing promises. They're observable improvements that affect day-to-day gameplay experiences. Some critics are stuck in 2020, regurgitating criticisms that made sense years ago but don't accurately reflect the current state of the project. They see broken elevators and conclude nothing works. They encounter RNG frustration and decide there's no real gameplay. This selective focus ignores the functioning systems while amplifying problems that exist in many early access titles. Here's the actual tension at the heart of this debate. Critics focus on technical limitations and incomplete features to support their not a real game narrative. Players focus on the genuine moments of emergent gameplay and compelling content that provide entertainment despite the systemic problems. Both perspectives contain truth, but they're evaluating entirely different aspects of the same complex product. Star Citizen in 2025 includes authentic gameplay moments that absolutely qualify as real gaming. When I decode facility logs to understand equipment failures, that's genuine problem solving. When I coordinate with org members to complete complex missions, that's legitimate multiplayer cooperation. When I make decisions about which facilities to prioritize based on potential rewards, that's meaningful player agency. The truth is messier than either extreme position suggests. Is it still a tech demo? Not entirely. There's real, repeatable gameplay that delivers satisfaction when everything aligns. But it behaves like an alpha in many critical ways that matter for long-term player retention. Star Citizen simultaneously contains both legitimate gameplay systems and significant technical limitations. It offers genuine entertainment alongside profound frustration. The real question isn't whether Star Citizen qualifies as a game anymore. The question is whether the core systems can be fixed quickly enough to retain players who are tired of watching elevators eat their rewards. I keep coming back to these Onyx facilities despite everything I've just described. That says something about both the quality of what works and my own questionable decision-making skills. The fixes aren't rocket science. They're not even particularly complex. They just need to happen before player goodwill evaporates completely. 3 core problems are killing otherwise excellent content. Freight elevators that erase your rewards, RNG systems with no fallback options, and fragmented narratives that break immersion. All 3 have straightforward solutions. First, implement server-side reward tracking so items never vanish when elevators inevitably fail. If the elevator breaks, let players claim their rewards from any terminal or through the mobile glass. Second, add either temporary, increased drop rates, or guaranteed milestone rewards until proper player trading arrives. After completing X number of facilities, you should be guaranteed at least 1 complete armor set. Third, include narrative transitions that acknowledge the multi-site investigation structure instead of pretending everything happens in one place. None of these require massive overhauls. They're targeted fixes that could work within existing frameworks. The development team has acknowledged ongoing repair initiatives, which means there's at least some hope these issues might eventually be addressed. I've poured hours into these facilities because I genuinely believe they represent Star Citizen's best content to date. When everything works, when the atmosphere sings, when the puzzles make sense, when the elevators actually deliver your rewards, these missions create gaming moments that few other titles can match. But the frequency of frustration is rapidly outpacing those moments of brilliance.
I'll keep running these facilities because I'm apparently a masochist who enjoys punishment, but I'll also keep pushing for these specific fixes because I've seen what this content could be if the basic systems would just get out of their own way. Drop a comment with your own Onyx Nightmare story. Tell me which fix you want first. At least we can commiserate while waiting for elevators that never arrive.